Thank you for coming to listen to and see the Real Mental Health Break. I'm Shawn Lesser, your host. Really excited to have everybody here. So, let me tell you a little bit about this show. So, what are we doing? We're talking about mental health when it comes to a lot of different areas, just in general, around sports, around finance, around different modalities to do. So we're having different guests from really across the world, across the spectrum of a whole stack of different areas. Let me tell you just a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to get our guest involved in the mix here. I'm very happy he's wearing that orange shirt for October. He looks like a very good pumpkin. So just a little bit about me. So 1 minute on the background. So Shawn Lesser, born in Brooklyn, grew up in Long Island, went to school at Syracuse University. I did 15 years. I did international institutional equity sales. Then in 2007, I co-founded the first impact investing investment bank. So that's what you see on my resume, and that's terrific. And then there's kind of like, what are you doing in mental health? So I had my own mental health challenges and breakdowns over the last 6 months or so. Was in a treatment center, psych ward, and a number of other wonderful places. But now we're starting with a new chapter because there's a lot of men, women, and families that are suffering, and we think we can help. So that's the purpose behind the reel. Also, we want to help people with the mental health break. That was enough for me. I'm very happy, excited to have my friend Ray Leonard Jr. On the show. Ray, why don't you give us a little intro? It's okay.
Yeah, hey Shawn, thanks for having me on. Excited to have this conversation today. It's a much needed conversation. So, a little bit about my background. Most folks will see my name and say, "Are you related to the boxer?" Yes, I am. I'm the son of Sugar Ray Leonard, the Olympic gold medalist and six-time world boxing champion. So, not a lot to live up to. But I was born in Palmer Park, Maryland. I'm a DMV guy, and my parents were teenagers when I was born. So we were thrust into the limelight after my father won the Olympic gold medal in 1976, and life just kind of changed really quickly. My background, I was a two-sport athlete. I played football and ran track and field at Ohio University. I also became a sports agent right after college, and built a pretty successful company. Sold my first company, and then moved into entrepreneurship, and has been in that space for quite a while. I've done stuff with the Olympics. Ran logistics for London in 2012, 2014 in Sochi, Russia in 2016 in Brazil, and became a public speaker. And didn't know that was going to be a thing, but I loved it, and it was cathartic. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'm a published author, and I'm also the CEO of a new tech company called Ovations, and a co-founder of a venture studio called Nobody Studios. So that's the Cliff Notes version.
That's clip notes. That's a lot of notes there, right?
I start talking. I'm a speaker. I start talking. I can't shut
I
up.
mean, that's like a lot of stuff. It was like, I didn't know when you were going to end. I was like, is he ever going to shut up? I mean, he keeps
Look,
on
I'm
going. All
I'm
this stuff
almost
he's got.
50 years old. I'll be 50
He's got
next
a lot
month,
of
so
stuff.
it's like a midlife crisis.
Sure. I understand that. I'm 54 years old, and I went through a midlife crisis, so I'm very aware. So Ray, let's talk about your pops a little bit and growing up, because obviously your dad was the champ and etc. And that's terrific. But maybe we can go to kind of two things, like what's like a really great memory that you had, and then on the flip side is, yeah, that sounds all terrific, but what were challenges that you might have faced?
Yeah, so glad you asked that question, because one of the big misconceptions that people have is that, oh, you grew up in a famous household, you guys had all this stuff. Uh, yeah, that's all cool, but there's a lot of other things that go along with it. And so some of the coolest things was being on commercials, being on television, because that was most of the time that I got to spend with my father. And most people know the life of an athlete and a successful, famous person. There's a lot of travel. There's a lot of demand of your time. And even though we were on camera all the time, we didn't spend a lot of time together off the camera. And so, the first commercial that we did was a big popular commercial for Seven Up. So
I
that's one
remember
of
it.
my yeah. People still say that. It's like, can you say, is that the champ? No, that's just my dad. So I have to, I mean, even now they come back and ask me that same thing. No, I'm not getting residuals for it anymore. So, yeah, that was one of the biggest memories because we were 17 hours on a set. No, just my dad and I having a good time. So that's one of the greatest memories. But also, we talk about the things that you asked about, the other side of it. The other side of it is that you're living in a bubble. Everybody's
Yeah.
judging you. Your pictures constantly taken. Everybody knows who you are, so you can't just kind of fade into the background sometimes that you want to do as a teenager. And for me, as a teenager, I had awkward moments, awkward times. I didn't want to be judged, but
Right.
I
Right.
was on camera, so I didn't have a choice.
Yeah. Was there one time in particular you remember when it was kind of example?
Yeah. So, my dad had decided to come back and fight this guy named Marvin Hagler, Marvelous
Of
Marvin
course,
Hagler.
Marvelous Mike. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Rest in peace, Marvin.
Yeah.
But that was such a time that everybody was picking one side or the other, like truly. And everywhere I went, I remember playing a basketball game. I think I was 15, and I go to the free throw line, and the whole crowd is yelling Hagler, Hagler, right? So that just kind of freaked me out. But I
Yeah.
sat there, I took a deep breath, and shot and made both shots because I wouldn't have been able to go home if I didn't make both shots. But that was one of the ones that really started to stick with me because it was constant. It was people
Right.
everywhere I went to, and to the mall, to the store. I mean, just to the park. Anywhere I went to, that was the whole chant, or people wanted to talk about it. So it kind of messed with your head a little bit.
So how would you say, I'm talking about like a little bit about mental health, right? Because people are, oh, I know you, I know your dad, and then like then I'm thinking, well, who am I? What am I doing, right? How do you mentally kind of get out of the shadow, honestly, when you're kind of in that situation, or what did you do, or how did you feel?
Yeah, that becomes a tough thing, trying to find your own identity. I mean, you all know that it's a struggle just trying to find out what you want to do in life, but trying to find your identity behind someone that is a six-time world champion that has achieved so much, and everybody's expecting you to do something similar.
Right.
So when that started to come about, it was just a mind game with me, and it took me probably until like I don't know, mid 30s to really
Hmm.
realize and get my own identity and say this is me and it's okay being me, and that the successes that I had were enough. Um, but yeah, I struggled with that for a long time, just trying to find my own identity, and it was a whole thing of self-esteem, like figuring out was I enough, but I couldn't show it. I'm from a boxing family. I got to be tough. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I struggled with that for a long time.
No, I totally understand. I was in the sports world, but I had a business, and then when that was gone, I was like, who am I? What am I doing? Because guys, especially, I mean, guys meet shoulder to shoulder, women meet face to face. We're just a little bit of a different animal, and I think guys especially put a lot of weight into their work or their profession or wherever it is, and then when that changes, you kind of look at yourself and say, who the heck am I, right? And you're saying, I'm just not, Ray's son. I'm freaking Ray Leonard Jr. So it's hard to get out of that kind of feeling. I think a
Yeah,
lot of guys.
I
Okay.
asked you about that too. Because trying to find your identity in certain spaces, and when you no longer have that thing that you identified yourself with, like what was that like for you? Like the
Yeah.
change in it, like you said, your business. That was what
Yeah.
you defined yourself by. What was
Yeah.
that like for you?
Yeah. I said Ray could ask me questions too, so just be aware of that. So now I was like,
You can't open the door and then don't let me do it.
this we just want to have a conversation. So that was really rough for me because I'd done one thing for such a long time and known for that, and then when that went away, I was like, who the heck am I? I'm just like a loser, and then you get into a bad mindset, and it just snowballs that you're looking at everything negatively, even though it's not negative. So for sure, for me, that was tough, and I just tell you, on this journey with the reels, probably we've had about 150 conversations, and lots of guys are feeling this way. I think that also happens quite a bit when you're, yeah, a little bit older. I'm 54, so people kind of look back and be like, who am I? What did I do? What's going on? So that's the kind of that's where I was at.
And I've seen it, especially for me being an agent and just my dad being an athlete too. When the lights go out, like it's hard to figure out what's next and figure out what do you do. And the
Yeah.
stigma behind being, guys, forever has been, especially coming from, where I came from and when you came from, it's like you don't talk about this stuff that you're
Especially the
struggling with.
boxing world. I mean, they're going to talk about that stuff. I don't. Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
No, you're a tough guy. You're a tough guy. Like you can't
Yeah.
show any kind of emotion. You can't show any
Yeah.
space where you're struggling with something. Push through it. Rub some dirt on it. That's
Yes.
always been the main thing, right? Get up and you can't be hurt. You can't be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's I'm glad you're having this conversation because you can really get to a breaking point with holding things in.
So, is there anything that you guys do or kind of tips? I know Ovation's got great speakers going out there helping them, and internally or externally that you're doing to deal with it personally on the mental health side, or with some of the folks that you're working with.
Yeah, for a long time for me, it was just working out and writing music and writing stuff down. That kind of helped for a while, but that was kind of just like a stopgap. It wasn't really
Mm-hmm.
addressing the problem. So one of the biggest things that I do is now is to meditate, to write
Mm-hmm.
down what's actually bothering me and address
Mm-hmm.
those issues one at a time. So it's not like I have to fix myself or fix anybody that I'm coaching or consulting right away, but it's acknowledging the issue first, like having that
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And then as you go through the day, this is one of my things that I do to continuously build myself up is, at night, we all go through ups and downs throughout the day. So
Yes.
I'd like to take my index cards, right on the sides. These were some of the bad things that happened today, and these were some of the positive things. Whether it's, I got up, I made my bed. I mean, something positive every single
Mm-hmm.
day. And I take the bad things, I acknowledge it that they happened, and then I rip them up. And then I have all these positive affirmations by the side of my bed when I get up in the morning. And so that's helped me kind of start the day. But then also, taking away the space of having conversations. Some of my friends who I played sports with, I'll call them and do a mental health check-in, and they'll call
Right.
me and do a check-in. Right? How you doing
Right.
today? Like I don't want
Right.
anything from you. I just want to see how you're doing today. And we're
Right.
open to have that conversation. So those are some of the things that we use right now.
Now that's cool. So I'm pitching the reel. That's kind of what a little bit what the reel is about. It's about conversations and then community, because when I was down and out, community was huge. Like really, we call our my mental health sponsor. His name was Brent Hurd, and he was like almost like you think of Alcoholics Anonymous and you have a sponsor. He was there calling, texting, whatever it was. So I think kind of dudes need other dudes, and in this world, I think there's a lot of loneliness and guys, where do they go? What do you do? You're running around, just maybe your kids' sporting events, this, that, the other thing, you're working, but kind of lose that kind of stuff maybe when you had it in college, or camaraderie, or guys that you can just go, like you're saying, checking on your buddies,
Yeah, and
that type of thing.
yeah, and one of the things is that we have to realize that we're fragile. Like we can be fine one day, and then the next day something can trigger us, and then put us in a state where we don't think there's a way out.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of speaking for the military, and you have a lot of PTSD. You have a lot of folks that are struggling, with being away from home, or they're trying to figure out their identity as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always a journey. Like it's no one like little pill that can take care of it. It's a journey
Right. Right.
because I would always isolate myself and
Yes.
try to be tough and hold things in. Wouldn't want to talk about it because you look at the embarrassment or perceived embarrassment of
Right.
someone knowing that we're struggling. And I think it takes a lot more strength to be able to talk about it and share it. And so what you're doing is building support systems I think that's an amazing thing.
No, we need it, and it's not just a U.S. problem. It's kind of a global problem. I want to change the topics a little bit on you, and I was just thinking about this today because I'd had some challenging situations, and I was thinking about almost like how my background is in finance and how the stock market works. It's all about fear and greed, right? And a lot of times, I'm doing things out of fear, right? And I'm like, I've been just analyzing my life and be like, so many times I'm afraid, right? So or I'm like, all right, or the greed side, like I really want to do that because I got to get money. So I think also I'm just referring it to the sports and boxing world. I don't know where I'm going with this, Ray, but I'm going to ask you.
Bring it back around.
I'll bring it back somehow. I don't know how it's going to come around, but yeah, I think that's the same a little bit in sports and like finance. When you see the stock market moving, it's usually from fear and greed, fear that you're gonna miss something, or greed, fear that you're missing something, or greed like I need to make more of this, that, the other thing. So how does that play a role? Maybe that you've seen in sports. I'm trying to bring it around, right? I don't know if it'll work.
You talk about fear and greed. There's a lot of
Yes,
greed.
sir.
There's a lot of greed, and there's a lot of fear. Especially with athletes that you continuously have to compete. You continuously have someone coming for your job all the time. And then as you age, it gets even more to that point where you're like, I don't know if my job's going to be here tomorrow, or if I'm going to be able to play this sport, or to do these things. But the mentality to be successful in that space has to be that you're fearless to a point. You're fearless about some of the risks that you take. You take calculated risks, just like you talk about in the stock market. But you got to be fearless to have the big game. And I see that with kids, especially because I've coached a lot of kids from high school, middle school to Pop Warner, and the confidence of being able to just participate, but then have yourself built up and grow. And then once you get to that spot or to that space, you talk about, I'm bringing it back around to greed. You get to that space that you're ahead, and that you're one of the best players, or you have that opportunity. You want to get greedy. You want to keep everything for yourself. All right, you want to be the person that gets all the accolades. So, there's everything in life. There's got to be a balance. I think I did that. I think I brought it around. I don't know.
You brought it around. Yeah, that's where I was kind of coming at too, because when I looked at that, the fear and the greed, I'm like, I don't want to live like afraid, because I've been living afraid for a long time. It's kind of, how do you just be like, no, that's not going to happen anymore. And it's hard to train your mind because your mind's been trained over so many years. So switching topics a little bit, and I'm going back to the identity, and I'm asking you a personal question, but it really actually also about your dad, because then athletes, I spoke to a baseball player and he said baseball players have two deaths, one when they die, one when they retire. So this is, people are, they know you for that specific activity that you're amazing at, but one day, old father time is undefeated, right? So, how did, for example, how did your dad deal with that?
Drugs and alcohol. That's how he dealt with it.
Right.
He struggled for years and years. He's been clean for about, I think, 13, 14 years now. But that's how he dealt with it. He didn't know how to deal with it. And one of the crazy things that we would talk about is anxiety. And having anxiety when no one is around, and not knowing why you're having this panic attack or anxiety. I remember one time that he was driving and he just had to pull over. It was like his heart. He was like, my heart, I don't know what's going on. Went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, no, you had a panic attack. But subconsciously, sometimes we have things going on in our head that we're worried about that we can't even put to words. And especially when you're starting to lose what you say was your identity. And you wrap yourself so much into something. And I mean, that happened to me too. I mean, I went through it, being an athlete, an entrepreneur, then becoming a father and a husband. It was something that I thought was, my gold medal, my championship belts. I thought that was it. And then it's like, okay, I've accomplished these things. Now what?
Right. Right.
like who am I? Right.
Right.
And so, going through that and having to deal with those stressors is a monster, man. How do you deal with the anxiety, Shawn?
I'm working on it, man. I'm working on it, right? I still have the anxiety. A couple of things that you were talking about was super helpful. So, for example, in the morning, you were talking about meditating. So, I'll meditate in the morning. Usually, I just pop on a meditation on YouTube and I'll listen to it. And then I'll like you do, I'll do some journaling. I don't really like to write, so I just talking to my phone. I'm not really even saying anything. I'm just kind of just blabbing stuff, but I feel like I get it out, the better. And then I think the other thing is that basically I just kind of think about where I came from. I was in a bad place. Look where I'm now. So kind of try to think like, okay, like 6 months ago, I was in a treatment center. I was like sleeping in the bed and just thinking about that experience and be like, dude, you're okay compared to that. So it's yeah, I don't know if that's the best technique, but it's doing the meditation, it's doing the journaling, it's exercising, it's things like that. I think another kind of huge thing is community, is having people to hang out with and talk to and be able to talk about this stuff and not feel like, oh, that's weird. I mean, that's what we're trying to do with the real, is to have a community where dudes can talk about stuff. And I'm not talking about like crunchy stuff, but I'm talking about you can just be like, hey man, this shit's going on in everyone's life and it's normal. So just I for a long time I wasn't talking about that. I keep it all in, right? I don't want to look weak or anything like that. But those are some of the things that I do.
It's crazy that we lose that as we age, man. We get older and we get into
Well, you
jobs.
look really old. I don't want to say anything.
You see that? Oh, there's the wrinkles coming. Yeah, but I remember one of the things that was like a solace place for me was going to school,
Yeah,
hanging out with friends and talking to them, running around and not having a care in the world at times.
yeah,
Right. So, but then you get to work and you have folks that are competitors to you, and
yeah.
that I can't talk to this person. They may be trying to sabotage me. Like I can't bring any of this conversation here. So you just have to
Mm-hmm.
focus on what you're doing at the job or at the office during that time. And then you get back home and you have family and you're like, okay, I can't talk to my my significant other about it
Right,
because
right.
they've been going through their stress all day, and
Yes,
we're arguing about something else. Like, so
yes.
it becomes that cycle that we don't find the time to have that right person or right people to help us get through.
No, no, I agree with you. And to transition a little bit, I also talk about, so I have a 14 and 15-year-old. So, well, how many kids you got? Four, did you say?
Four. Yep, I
Okay,
have
what do
four
you got?
kids. I have a 28-year-old daughter, Ariel. She lives in Atlanta. I have a 20-year-old son, Jalen, that's in playing football in Savannah State in Georgia. And then I have my two younger ones, Devin, who's just turned 17, and Ryan, that just turned, well, she's 15. She'll be turning 16 this year. So, a 15 and 17-year-old here at home going to high school right now. So that's a challenge in itself, and that's actually why I have my book that I wrote. I'm finally a
Okay.
published author, but I wrote my book, Know Better, Do Better, a life guide for the next generation, to talk with that and have these conversations with my kids that my parents didn't have with me.
Oh, tell me a couple of things. Let's pitch that bad boy. Tell me a couple of things, key findings from that, because people want to hear about I mean, kids are always on everyone's phone.
Yeah, well, so in the book, so it's a spaces to journal. We talk about mental health. We talk about peer pressure. It talks about self esteem. It talks about finding your own identity. And there's spaces in there where you can have the conversations with your parents,
Hmm.
or your parent or whoever's your guardian. You can have the conversation and write it down, see where you were at that point in time. And then also, I had some great contributors that talked about their stories from my father, Magic Johnson,
Wow.
Dr. Jen Welter, who was the first NFL female NFL coach. So Prince Daniels, who played for the Baltimore Ravens, and he became a
Mhm.
monk after having a mental health breakdown. So it's some good life lessons that I wish I was able to have these conversations with my parents back in the day. And so it's just a guide that helped me with me and my kids. So I'll send you a couple copies too.
I was gonna ask you. I need some free stuff. So
I
I
got
was
you.
about to ask you, like, can you hook me up? So where
I got
is
you
it like?
covered.
Where can folks buy that?
Yeah, on my website, it's RayLeonardJr.com.
Well, you got to
Also,
say
I
that
have,
slower, man. You got to pitch that slower. Right.
yeah, you can buy it on my website at RayLeonardJr.com. Also on Instagram at Ray Leonard Jr. And then it'll be on Amazon and all the other platforms in about a week.
That's awesome. That sounds great because I think there's a lot of pressures on kids. Obviously, we did a thing with the real and KIP schools last. Was it last week? So it was really interesting to hear kids' perspective. And of course, when we were growing up, you didn't really have the social media, and that makes it even harder. It makes it harder for us, but especially social media. To me, you're just looking at people's highlight films. It's like
Right.
your sports highlight films. Like they're not even real, and then you think you have to match up with those.
Mm,
So it's hard enough for adults to look at that, but then for children, um, it's tougher because they can't. It's hard to see for them. Um, I'm not like totally against social media, but those are some of the challenges uh, that it's tough.
yeah, let me ask you this. I mean,
Yes,
how
sir.
how was it with you and your kids, or how was you and your kids as go went through the breakdowns and
Yeah,
finally
it's,
having to figure it out, because they sense it. I mean, we may not think that they know, but my kids have seen when I struggle and come up to me and say, what's going on, right?
Ray.
So, but
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, but
Why are you asking me a hard question, dude? I mean, I got you on the show, and you're asking me a hard question. No,
you,
I'll
you
answer
you
it.
said I could ask questions.
Yeah. So no, it's an excellent question. So, when I had my thing basically breakdown, for one thing, I tried to hide it from my kids for a long time. But then I got worse where I was physically shaking. I'd be like sitting on the floor watching TV, in our living room, and my legs shaking, and I'm sitting next to my dad's calling me right now. Maybe he heard me. I'm and my daughter, and my son were there. I tried to stop, but I couldn't. So
Mm,
eventually, obviously couldn't hide it from them. Um, and at one point, I wasn't really there. I wasn't really acknowledging them so well. And then I went away for 70 days to some treatment centers. And when I got back, I said to my son and my daughter, I was like, listen, I'm sorry I was gone. I'm not going to cry in this interview, Ray. You trying to make me cry?
mm,
I said, I'm sorry I was gone. And they said, listen, Daddy, it's fine. We got our daddy back. So we're
mm.
happy. So they were very understanding. It's funny. My boy was wearing a shirt yesterday. It's like about supporting mental health. So I think they're more in tune. It's not something so strange to them.
Right. So what was it for you that's was kind of the final straw, or the thing that motivated you to start the foundation and say, because it's hard enough getting yourself help, but then coming
Yeah.
back and saying I want to help somebody else.
I don't know. I was just trying to use something, turn something bad into something good, because you're like, that's the worst thing that ever happened in my life, and I kind of trying to be like, this is horrible, and I'm like, all right, maybe the worst thing that happened in my life could be the best thing that might happen in my life. Now that's strange, but stranger things have happened. So it's almost like when we started on this, I talked to so many people who were like in the same position. So it's so usual, but it's not unusual. I don't really believe it's statistics. It's half a degree or 0 degrees from everybody, you know. So I don't
Yeah,
know, kind of a calling.
yeah, that's
I'm going to
that's
help you, Ray. I'm going to help you. No, you've been helping
yeah.
me.
Yeah, help me, man. We got to help each other. That's
Exactly.
it. And one of the
Exactly.
biggest things for me is when I found, kind of my passion for speaking about mental health, is when I started speaking, for the military. And
Yeah.
it wasn't a thing that I thought I would be doing. Never thought I'd be on a stage, speaking about uh, domestic violence and drug and alcohol abuse and suicide and
Yeah.
PTSD and all those different things. And but when I started to open up, I was freaking out my first time,
Yeah.
because first of all, speaking for 60 minutes, I didn't know that I could do that and
Yeah.
entertain
Yeah.
somebody. But secondarily, it was me opening it up and telling stories about myself. and
Ray,
being
they're going to cut
vulnerable.
us off. I got to tell
Oh
you,
man,
just got 2 seconds left. Thanks
dang
for this
it.
real talk. There's more to come. That'll be the next episode.
Yeah, there you go.
We're sorry. I think we ran out of time, but I don't know if it's still going. But keep going. I don't
Oh,
know if
all
it's
right.
still played.
Yeah. So one of the first times I was on stage is that, um, I started talking about some issues that I was struggling with, and somebody came up to me afterwards and said, what you said today changed my life. About, I was going to take my life today, but because you made
Wow.
it real that I didn't want to do it. So, you know, this matters, and what you're doing matters, Shawn.
No, you're doing it too. So now I'm gonna have to do the end. I'm sorry for cutting you off, man. That was a good story, and I screwed it up, Ray.
Oh, good.
No, I
Okay,
want, I want, I want,
close us out.
close this out, baby. So listen, I want to thank everybody for listening. We're going to do this. We do this every Wednesday between 12 and 1-ish. Really great to have Ray on the show. I think a couple of takeaways just that's Ray's doing around mental health is meditating, writing stuff down. I really like the index cards. Really super what you're doing around your book. Can you mention that again? Because it's awesome.
Yeah, it's a book for a youth book, and then for parents to have conversations, tough conversations, and it's called Know Better, Do Better, which my grandfather told me when I was young, and it helped me. But it's called Know Better, Do Better, a life guide for the next generation. So, check it
Perfect.
out.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Thank
Ray.
you. All
See
right, Shawn.
y'all. Bye bye.